Okay, it's Roger once again, Mudfossil University. Today going into the deepest depths of energy and light and so forth. And I've shown this many times. I have dozens probably of videos about light and energy and accelerating light, which is obviously accelerating. It started off as just regular little waves and now it's accelerated. It's a particle. It creates plasma. So let's take it a step further. Well, this is Roger once again. Hopefully you've seen part 1 in the Electron Flood series, and I am going to go into the math and a little deeper into the special conditions that affect electron floods. Now, I'm going to show experimental evidence, which I'm going to call proof. I'm going to say light is luminescent corpuscles, just as they said in the past. That is true. Light can be accelerated. Seen, obviously. Light frequencies are set and constant. That I can tell you happens because of the experiments that show it accelerates and then it comes back to the same frequency. I can't explain it. Light particles are dark matter and energy because they are still particles and they are still energetic, although not, they're potentially energetic in the vacuum of space, which they are not interacting with anything. They're still particles. They still have the ability to create energy when they collide. They are the dark matter. Space is filled with that dark matter, and I call it light ether. It's the ether of light. It is the corpuscles of expelled particles from luminescent bodies. Much, much, much more. There are no neutrons. Now let's go forward. Okay, electron flood theory claims that the electrons are the particles, and normally those are the things that crash. And certainly those are the things that jiggle. Now, you're going to have different levels of energy. We got slow, fast, and heavy energy. Well, what does that mean? Slow energy is local. It's right in the same area. It's vibration. That is slow energy. I'm creating... There's energy going around there. There's bouncing. Those molecules are spreading out. Those electrons are invading other areas, just bumping them. They're not flowing. Okay, so the molecules are vibrating. That's local energy, and that's slow energy. Then you have fast energy. That's outbound energy. That's electron flow. That's electricity. It's lightning. It's light. It's all of those things. Electricity, electrostatic discharge, light, electrons. Slow energy is just friction, scrubbing, chemical bonding, sound, heat. It's not flowing out, shooting out particles. These are particles that are outbound. Now we have heavy energy. And what does that mean? Those are the cores, which have positives and negatives. Originally, they would have called those radioactive isotopes. That means that they thought they had extra neutrons in them that would fall apart and explode out of there. Well, they're not. They're extra core positives with negatives. And when they do go off, they go off like a hand grenade. But they're not shooting out any neutrons. There is no neutrons. They're shooting out a chunk of positive with a chunk of negative flying out of it. That's an alpha particle. The rest of them are beta particles. Well, this don't have any particle movement. This is beta particles moving out as electrons and light and electricity. These are heavy energy cores of positive with negatives. And those only happen when you have radioactive substances, meaning that their core is unstable. Now, why will a core be unstable? We'll get into that. But it happens when you crush everything together in a nuclear explosion, and then the cores of the nucleuses become invaded with extra protons and electrons, and they become an unstable central mass. And I just demonstrate that with the vibrational sounds that happen at exact certain frequency lock in patterns in these little salt structures. You see it. It's very, very elegant, and it's compelling because it shows up the rule of 8 in virtually every single case. Now, all complete matter has positive and negative, and there are no neutrons. Every single complete matter, everything that's here, and every liquid and gas and everything has both positive and negative. Now, there's no neutrons, and the cores have electrons that flooded. Where they thought there was neutrons, there's electrons. Then, these are the shapes that I'm going to display of what I'm considering the normal region and zone that an electron will own. These are electrons, a little dot in the center. Normally they sit like this, just a little dot in the center, and they have, these are the protons, the nucleus core. And then they have the electrons sitting in orbits around. Now, when you take a regular electron, and it sits here normally, when it goes flying through space, it distorts like this because it is flowing through space like a jet fighter, so its region of influence is limited here, but it's impactful. And when it hits another one, it does that. So this becomes excited as an impact. This is excited because it's being thrown away from something. And it does just exactly what you would expect it to do. And when it crashes into something, they glow. Now, the glowing, I'm not certain of the process that creates the glow, but we do see a glow, and that's an energetic glow, and it creates heat. So it is the pushing of electronic fields, of electric flux lines into each other, opposing each other, because they're both negative. And every single thing there is coated with negatives on the surface. Every single thing you're looking at here is literally painted with negatives, because no positive exists in an orbital. All negatives in the orbitals. So they always exist around the central atom. So every single thing there is has electrons on the surface. So when I push this against that, that's an electron against electrons. There is a repulsion here. And if I hit that really hard, two things, you create heat. It actually creates sparks if you hit it hard enough. They'll actually shoot out things. Now, let's go on a little deeper, because this sets the stage for the three different types of energies. There's one that doesn't go anywhere and just shakes. There's one that shakes so hard that it spits things out, but they're little bitty things. And then there's ones that explode because they have been crushed together, the nucleuses, at one point, and they exceed their stability in the core. I just want to make one thing clear. Somewhere a minute into talking about this slow, fast, and heavy energy, I say that chemical bonding, chemical energy has no electron flow. Well, that's wrong. It has an electron flow, and heat has an electron flow. It's just a much slower electron flow than light and true electricity. Although chemical bonding creates true electricity in some cases, that happens it can happen extremely slowly, and it can happen extremely fast. So that one there is a little bit tricky, but I just want to make it clear that chemical bonding, it does create a flow of electrons. Okay, once again, my friends, this is it, electron flood. It's going to be called EF, electron flood, and the variables in electron flood are the mass, which is m, that's the particle size, atomic mass unit, weight, whatever you want to call it. Now there's going to be electron type masses, and there's going to be nucleon type masses, which are your heavy element, radioactive type chunks. Then you're going to have the spin frequency, and it's going to be either a plus or minus. We've seen that they spin both ways, it appears. So there's going to be a charge associated to the spin frequency. Then you're going to have the c, which is the speed of the particle, and that is variable. It's never been just a constant, which makes a big change in things. That is variable, and of course you got nucleons and you got electrons, and they can go at different rates. They can go at all different rates. Then you have the density of the media penetrating into. Is it wide open space? Is it ether? Is it some dense liquid? Is it some dense gas? What is it you smashing into? That's the key. What's the density of the media that you're going to slam into or pass through? Then what is the motion of the media you're penetrating into space? Is it coming at you? Is it going away? Is it going sideways? That will all have an interaction. So here's the equation. E equals the mass, which the mass will never be zero because nothing is zero. There's nothing that exists that has a mass of zero. So energy is always going to have a mass times the spin frequency times the speed of the particle times the density of the media times the motion of the media. And every one of those will have a little factor in it. And it will say the media is going this fast, the density is this thick, the speed is so much, the mass of the particle is so much equals the energy. Now, if electron flood is true, we actually have absolutely no idea about the distances of things away from us in space, because the whole idea of the expansion of space is now totally in question, and I think silly, because nothing exceeds itself and keeps running away from itself faster and then exceeds the speed of light, which is supposed to not be able to be exceeded. I mean, it's turned into fantasy of enormous proportion. So therefore, when we see the light coming at us and say, oh, that's shifted so much, that means it's so far away. No, it has nothing to do with the shifting of the distance. It's the shifting of the media that it's penetrating through. That's the problem. How much is it attracted backwards? How much is it slowing down? So we got some serious issues to deal with. It's a complete reboot. I'm sorry, that's what it is. All right, what's being presented here at Mudfossil University is changing literally everything that we thought about where we live, and about energy, and about geology, and about space, physics. This is geology. That's geology. That's not biology, although it was biology, and now it's geology, and that's from a giant female body part. Blood is everywhere. Tendons are everywhere. Biology is everywhere in the earth. Everything that we thought we knew about what we were being told that was true is not true. It just wasn't true. There's blood and meteorites saturated in them. That's a gigantic lung. Came through space. All right, it's time to really investigate this stuff with open eyes and see, whoa, the guy's nuts. Well, I'm not crazy. And the weather patterns and the ether are caused by the same causes. Here once again, here it is right here. You should come up and look at this, because this makes sense, and what you're listening to by the people that are supposedly making sense has no sense whatsoever. We are being ripped through the ether of the entire galaxy. We're here. We are going to go through different layers of density. It is just obvious. It's obvious. What we need to do is pay attention to the things that we're presenting here. All right? I don't mean to get confrontational, but if you don't get confrontational with physicists and the people that are speaking down to you, they will speak down to you, and you will say, yes, sir, and they will be wrong, which they are right now. So I want somebody to confront me. I've confronted everybody. Not a single person will confront me. All right, Mudfossil University, Roger, R-O-G-E-R, at mudfossils.com. Serious, factual inquiries and scrutiny of my serious, factual evidence I would like. Because now you're just fishing in the dark. I'm serious. I don't mean to be downgrading anybody, but this is a problem. And if you won't confront it and you won't address it, then you're just living in fantasy land and happy being deluded. Perfectly happy deluded. That's what I say. And I'm not perfectly happy deluded. And I'm perfectly happy in reality. It's a tough reality, but I'm happy there. I can live there. This is the kind of thing we're plowing through right now. I think it has more to do with what we're plowing through than the carbon dioxide that's in our atmosphere. We're destroying the earth with coal and oil and gas and fracking. We're absolutely destroying the earth. No question whatsoever. That's why Mudfossil University also presents the possibility of plasma fusion. Right? The Venturi is not just an accelerator of electrons. It should accelerate any particles at high speed that are coming in there that have fields surrounding them, which every particle should have some sort of a field, and then they will plasmatize. That's what I'm alleging. Now, I could be wrong, but if it was done in a vacuum, we may be able to create ether. We may be able to create plasma with heavy particles. And at that point, you can create fusion. If you create fusion, we can fix this freaking mess that we've made of this Earth. Okay, there is a next step to this whole thing. It's anti-gravity and creating some form of a positiveness similar to an atomic bomb, which you don't have to make a bomb, but you need to make some form of positiveness in the matter so that it elevates from the Earth. And that's what's happening here, and I'm explaining in detail. So, there's a lot more to go on this, and this is going to require fully understanding the core. And at this point, I do not fully understand it. So, here's a little blip about how antimatter works. Anti-gravity works. Okay, this is the next step, anti-gravity. This is atomic bomb testing, 2.25 million hits, atomic bomb explosion, guide wiki. And this is on YouTube, and I'm a fair user, so I'm going to show this. Now, let me explain what's going to happen in a nuclear bomb. They have a heavy chunk of matter here that is extremely heavy elements, and they have them packed together as tightly as they can get them so that all the electrons and there's no neutrons, forget neutrons, they don't exist. All of the positive particles are crushed as tightly to the negative particles as they can, because as you have seen in my videos before, the core of nucleuses is nothing more than positives and negatives until it floods a little bit past neutrality, and it creates a negative opposing force that creates the orbital electrons. So you have nothing but positive and negatives. There's no neutrons, ever was. It's silly, and the theory I have is electron flooding. So the core is completely flooded with electrons. Now, going from there, we have nothing but a cloud of dense electrons with completely encased around protons, which are your positives. Then they force everything together. So now your negatives are crushing into each other. Your positives are crushing into each other. What is the result of that? All your negatives will leave here in an instantaneous flash, and a lot of positives and chunks, and they call them alpha particles and beta particles, gamma. It's alpha particles are heavy, dense particles, which are more than just electrons. They are nucleus particles, so their protons are also attached to electron chunks, little chunks like hand grenades coming out of there. Now, what else is coming out of there? Light, which is the extremely, but it's so far on the upper end of light, it's into the beta particles, which are just devastating on their own, and then just a little bit below that you get into the light spectrum with the gamma rays, which is still devastating, and so forth down the range. Now, why do we end up with nuclear radiation fallout? Why is it so heavily reactive? Because you've literally forced extra electrons into the nucleuses, which they don't want. They only have a certain amount. Now you have radioactive isotopes, which means they think they're extra neutrons. They're not extra neutrons, they're extra electrons. So now what happens? That thing is like a hand grenade ready to explode. And if you drop it, or something hits it, or another particle comes along, or even just something happens to it as it decays, in some of the barrier regions somehow get disturbed, it will explode just like a hand grenade. Then you get pieces and chunks, and you get nuclear pieces coming out of there, proton pieces attached to electrons, which are devastating. And they just go off like hand grenades, just like you would expect them to do, because they are forced to accept these extra bits and particles. They don't want them. They say, you're not supposed to be here. So, well, I'm sorry. Somebody crushed me in when it exploded. He said, well, I'm going to push you as soon as I get a chance. You're going, and you're going to go with a bang. And they said, well, that's the way it's going to work, and it does. And then they just they throw these pieces out, and there is so many particles in the tiniest little spots. You just have no. There's no mind that can put themselves in the position of how many tiny particles there really is in a very, very small piece of matter. All right. So now we're going to go into the nuclear explosion. I'm going to show this completely coming off the ground, and I'll explain it as it happens. And this is anti-gravity because the core will become positive. All the electrons will blow out of here, and you'll see them go through the enormous radiation. And then it will go straight up in the air. And then it will try to get its electrons back. That's what causes the mushroom cloud. Now, get ready. Go get yourself a bowl of popcorn, ice cream, whatever you like best. All right, here we go. Okay, here it goes. When it goes off, you're going to see the flash. Everybody knows about that. Boom. Okay, that's all of your electrons and particles leaving instantly because they've been forced together. Now they're being thrown away. So most of it is light, but there will also be some heavy particles. So here it goes. All right, now, you see these vapor rings up here? That is the light penetrating through the layers of the atmosphere, vaporizing it. That right now is the glow of a intense magnetic interaction, which is they've just all been forced together. They've all left, and now they're going to start to come back in together. This is where you will see it rise, and that is where the activity is, because that is where the positive mass is. All the electrons are gone virtually now. And it is lifting itself off the Earth, because the Earth is positive. It will always want electrons to attract to it. This no longer has electrons. It is now a positive mass. It's going to go straight up, and the core will bring those electrons back into itself, because it will say, bring them back to me. Here it goes, straight up in air. It's going to suck everything off the air with it, because it's going straight up. Now it's saying, bring them back, bring them back. You see the glow up here, not down here. That is anti-gravity. There's no other way to put it. It's anti-gravity. And now it's bringing its own electrons back in. That's why you see that intense glow. And it will continue to do that until it reabsorbs neutrality. Because right now it's a positive mass being pushed from the Earth magnetically. That is not rising from heat or anything. I had a guy say, but he's supposed to be a physicist. He said, well, don't you know heat rises? And that was the end of it. That's the end of his story. That is anti-gravity. And you have to get away from the fact of what Einstein said. The things he said were not correct. Light can be accelerated. I've shown it many, many, many times. There are no neutrons. There's no neutrons. They'd roll away. There's no neutrons. They can't be there. So let's come back to reality and go with a little different take on things. Light is particles. They come from the sun. We know they're coming from the sun. They come and hit the Earth. We know they're hitting the Earth. They are particles in between. They are the things they've been looking for. They are the dark energy and the dark matter that exists in transit until it collides with something. It's just as simple as that. It's not an electromagnetic wave that is a photon of no mass. That is insanity. Einstein was wrong on every level, really, I'm telling you. He just got lucky in the fact that if you push all this stuff together, it explodes. I mean, E equals mc squared. If he says photons have no mass, is what he said. And he said photons are light, is what he said. And he said E equals mc squared, is what he said. And if m is 0 of mass, is what he said, that means E equals 0. Right? So photons' energy is zero in Einstein's world. Then you come up with all these little constant things and little squiggly lines they want to throw in to make it work, and you cannot make it work. It does not work.